Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Fab. I'm the chairperson of Pakistan Positive League. And today I have an article I'm going to read to you from the Veterans Today website. If you want to check it out yourself, you can go to veteranstoday.com. And it's very important you listen to all of this article. It is very, very important. So the title of this article is Israel Strikes Syria with Tactical Nuke. And it starts as late on Saturday night, 28th April, a series of airstrikes hit Syria. Local time was 10:30 p.m., about 2 hours after sunset. Of particular interest is the strike that hit a target near Hama, supposedly an arms depot. This strike produced an explosion of such massive magnitude that it shook the earth violently enough for the tremors to be picked up by seismic monitoring stations in Europe, which recorded a magnitude of 2.6 earthquake. An explosion on the Earth's surface, in order to cause tremors between 2 and 3 on the Richter scale, would be between 1.5 and 3 kilotons of TNT equivalency. Clearly, this was a tactical nuclear weapon, and the arms depot stories the usual cover automatically issued when there is a suspicious Big Bang. There is very little video available of the explosion. However, at 2 minutes, 36 seconds into the video below, there is a white flash visible. Although there has been no official statement from either Tel Aviv or Damascus, it is clear that this strike was carried out by the Israelis. Most likely they used a GBU-28 carried by an F-15 and toss-bombed onto the target after approaching over Lebanon at low level, then climbing to cross the anti-Lebanon mountains, releasing the weapon at the apex of their climb, then immediately turning and running for home. As you can see in the photos published by Al-Masdar, the target was totally obliterated. This is the aftermath of a tactical nuclear strike, everything reduced to rubble. Note the shipping containers blown around like toys, the blown back trees, and a very large, shallow crater. Too big for a standard weapon of 1,000-pound size, it appears to be a low-altitude air blast causing the 2.6 magnitude quake. Everything was vaporized, no soot, carbon present on the ground. Only steel, car parts left intact that were melted at high temperature. No aluminium, meaning that the heat was over 3,000 degrees in order to vaporize it away. A big blast like this is over 20,000 pounds, so definitely not conventional explosives. Small arms and artillery rounds go off like popcorn in a microwave oven. Conventional blasts throw up lots of dirt with a small fireball. These huge plasma fireball mushroom cloud explosions are small neutron bombs using lots of lithium-6 with a thin outer layer and shell of fissile material. Very clean burn with minimal fallout. After several hours, radiation would be almost undetectable above background. These tactical neutron bombs are likely uranium-based in order to mask their use. They're either older warheads from surplus SS-21 missiles from Russia, Ukraine, or newer Israeli-made stuff using the surplus US stocks transferred under Daddy Bush. This is why both sides are quiet on their use. Much of this black market nuclear proliferation happened under Hillary and Tom Countryman at T section of the US State Department. This is why Trump fired Countryman and cleaned out T section. They let the stuff out the back door. Thus far, there has been no official statement on the strike by Damascus, Moscow, or Tehran. Most likely, there never will be any public acknowledgement that a nuke was used, just as there has never been on any of the many other occasions they have been used. The tremors ranked as a magnitude 2.6 quake by the European Mediterranean Seismological Center were apparently detected in the aftermath of powerful explosions that occurred at the arms depot of the 47th Brigade of the Syrian Army near Hama in the aftermath of the alleged attack, though the exact cause of this attack has yet to be determined. According to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, the missile attacks that apparently hit several Syrian government military bases on Saturday evening might have been conducted by Israeli forces, though the country's representatives have refused to comment on the issue. Earlier on Sunday, Israeli Defense Minister Lieberman stated that Israel would continue to maintain its freedom to operate in Syria. There's a lot of other data mentioned in this article, and I can give you a link of this. But it's very important that you read this article because it's probably the only credible source available out there in the mainstream media that will tell you that Israel is now on a nuking spree. And this is not just Syria. This happened in April, and this article mentions that nuking in various areas of the world has become the norm now. So we are not a nuke-free world anymore, which is the general impression given to the rest of the world since 1945 atomic bomb thrown by US over Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We've been told that the atomic bomb has never been used again. But the reality is the opposite. Syria was nuked, Yemen was nuked, again by Israel. There's another article I'm going to share with you. Read it because it will prove to you that the massive Yemeni blast done recently was also a nuclear attack. These were tactical nuclear weapons that were used in all these wars. And they're doing this under the nose of United Nations, under the nose of Amnesty International, under the nose of Human Rights Watch. And the mainstream media is all hushed up, is all quiet about it. And then Netanyahu recently threatened Iran and Gaza with another nuclear attack. And because of the recent happenings where Iran actually had a big victory at UNGA, that Europe decided to bypass the sanctions that were imposed upon Iran by US and decided to trade with Iran in their own currency or with an alternative fiscal system, Netanyahu is very upset at Gaza. And there is an imminent threat of a nuclear attack on Gaza, due to which the first thing that happens is that United Nations that knows about this attack decides to evacuate its own workers from Gaza. They're currently being evacuated right now as there is a threat of an imminent attack on Gaza that will be again using tactical nuclear weapons. And there's no mention anywhere, not in the mainstream media, not even on social media. But then think about it. Who is governing, who is managing these social media outlets? YouTube, Google, Instagram, and Facebook, Twitter. These are all US-based companies. And US is the biggest ally of Israel. Trump recently signed a document and an agreement with Israel that US will protect the nuclear assets of Israel. So Trump is protecting Israel, US is protecting Israel, Pentagon is protecting Israel. And because of this, you will not even find this on social media. I tried to post this one article that was a very good analysis. It was a defense strategic analysis of this attack. And Facebook said they will not let me post this article. So what I had to do was, I had to take a picture of the article, and then I posted the picture of this article on Facebook so that people would at least know that this happened. So we think we have the freedom and the right to know through the social media. when our mainstream media has been telling us lies all this time, I think we have to rethink that belief of ours again. The social media is as much controlled by the Zionists as the rest of the media. There's 6 companies that own the mainstream media houses, from New York Times to Boston Globe to CNN to BBC. Everything is under their control. That is why you don't see the Israeli war crimes highlighted in any of these mainstream media houses. So when Israel goes on a nuking spree because Israel finds it easy to threaten its enemies with a nuclear attack, Israel thinks it's above law, above international law, and it is even mentioned that they do not want to be regulated by the international law. They have their own laws, and if they think a nuclear attack is warranted, they will do it. And they've been doing it. But here's the problem. Netanyahu was still given a VIP status at UNGA. He was allowed to blabber all his lies against Iran, whose nuclear program is still a big question mark compared to the fact that he's been on a nuke spree himself in Syria, in Yemen, and now in Gaza. And this article said a lot of other things, that there have been nuclear attacks going on all over the world, and nobody's talking about it because they don't want to terrify people. When are they going to talk about it? When the world is going to end? When the earth is going to vanish, vaporize? When this earth is going to vaporize due to the craziness and the madness of a few global leaders who think they can bully, they can destroy the habitat, the earth, the smaller nations with their heavy nuclear arms? When are we going to talk about it? When are we going to tell the world about it? The mainstream media is not going to tell you. The social media is controlled. And there, I looked up so much. I did try to do so much research on this. There was an article by Newswire that everybody says comes up with fake news. But this is Veterans Today. This is written by the veterans of the US Army. And they know their stuff. They built these weapons and they know how to use them. And they are specialists in analyzing the post-blast situation. And this is a very good article. Read it. It is written by specialists. It is not a spook. These people know their stuff. This is a very credible source, and this credible source is telling us that Israel is on a nuke spree. It will nuke anybody, anywhere. It is using uranium-enriched neutron bombs, which are tactical nuclear weapons, the last time I checked. And they will deny it. They will say, oh, it's just we'll do a fact check, we will do this and that. The reality is that everybody is well aware of Israeli lies. They lie. They don't care. They will not allow anybody to stand up or defy their lies. They have controlled the mainstream media. They have control of the social media. If I try to boost this this video that I'm just making in the rest of the world, including the US, I will be stopped. Because US is no longer a democracy. There's no freedom of expression anymore. The First Amendment right of bills, which gives freedom of expression, which gives an average citizen freedom to speak against anything, is gone. They have a net neutrality law currently being discussed and almost implemented in some states. And then the social media companies are being bullied to the point that they have to abide by the bullying laws imposed upon them by the US government, because most of the popular social media outlets are US based. They're companies at the end of the day. They're all corporations. They want profit. They want the freedom to be able to practice their business. And if US bans them, they will not have a future. So they have to listen to what the government tells them. And if US government decides that a certain post is against the interest of its closest ally, which is Israel, they will shut it down. They will not let the truth come out. But what are the consequences we're looking at? The consequences we're looking at is a vaporized earth, vaporized human beings, vaporized nuked planet. And I would like to shun United Nations. I would like to shun Antonio for his silence. United Nations is supposed to be a platform where you're supposed to talk about these things, where you're supposed to bring up matters like this, but now we have these countries that are using nuclear weapons wherever they want to, at their whim, for their interest, against the international laws, and nobody has the courage to even talk about it at an international platform, let alone do something about it. So even talking about it is prohibited. Okay, if there is doubt, we can discuss it. Did Israel nuke Syria? Did Israel nuke Yemen? Is Israel planning to nuke Gaza in the name of so-called defense against Hamas? We should talk about it. Let's talk about it at the universities. Let's talk about it at various international pro-peace platforms. Because once you talk about it, once you have dialogue about it, you would want to probe and dig deeper to look for the truth. Allow the investigative journalists to probe for the truth. The truth has to come out. The truth has the right to come out, because we as civilians of the world want a better world for our people, for our generations, for our children. We do not want a world that will be subservient to one country like Israel that goes on its nuking spree, that's unchecked, unaccounted for by any regulatory body. Where's FATF? They would sanction these smaller countries like Pakistan, like any other country. North Korea was recently, they tried to sanction it just because it uttered the word that it will go to war. Just because it uttered the word that it will go to war. India just threatened Pakistan with a nuclear attack. No action taken. Why? Because Pakistan is not a wealthy country. It is not worth talking about if India decides to nuke Pakistan. Israel nuked Syria, and nobody wants to talk about it because Syria is a gone case. It's a devastated country. Nobody likes Assad because the mainstream media portrays Assad as a monster. All he's trying to do is to preserve the sovereignty of his country. That's all he's trying to do, and that is his basic right as the ruler of that country, to try to preserve the integrity of the borders of his country. And what is Israel's business in Syria? Syria has designated, demarcated boundaries. What is Israel's business in Syria? What is Israel's business in Yemen? The Yemen war is between Saudi Arabia and Iran. What is Israel doing over there? What are Israeli weapons doing over there? What are the tactical nuclear weapons of Israel doing in Yemen? Complete devastation of two nations done under the noses of Antonio, under the noses of Ken Roth, under the noses of Salil Shetty, under the noses of all humanitarian agencies who have no idea how to manage, let alone even talk about it. They are so scared, they're so petrified of the consequences that Israel is going to push them into if they try to speak up, that they have lost the right of being called humanitarian agencies. The first thing, the first definition of the humanitarian agency is that it should have the courage to speak up, to talk about that wrong is being committed, even if the wrongdoer is rich, wealthy, powerful, backed by the only superpower of the world. That is the first criteria, ethical criteria, basis for which you can say someone is humanitarian. And if United Nations does not qualify to have these criteria, it cannot be called humanitarian. If Human Rights Watch does not follow this basic code of conduct, it cannot be called humanitarian. If Amnesty International does not follow this basic Bill of Rights that any humanitarian agency should follow and have in its charter, it has no right of calling itself a humanitarian agency. We as civilians, as independent humanitarian civilians who want a better world for our children, who want a better future, a brighter future, when there are no nukes, when nobody's nuking anybody, we have to stand up. We have to tell the world no more. We want to talk about it. We have to bring Israel in the court of law. We have to petition Israel in the International Court of Justice, if there is any justice in the International Court, since it is funded by US, since it is the sub-branch of United Nations. We have to bring Israel in the International Court, whether it is the ICJ, which I do not have any faith in because of its conflict of interest, or any other court. We have to petition Israel for violating international law, nuking 2 nations, which goes against the International Code of Conduct, and then threatening to nuke Iran, threatening to nuke Gaza, because Israel knows it can get away with it. We have to tell Israel you cannot get away with it, because there are about 8 billion civilians on this world, regardless of our religion, regardless of our nationality, regardless of our background. We have to interrogate Israeli war crimes. We have to interrogate this nuke attack that was committed right under the noses of all regulatory bodies, right under the noses of all humanitarian agencies, and nobody is allowed to talk about it. And United Nations has no right to call itself humanitarian or the so-called platform where people can get justice. It is not the door through which you can get justice. Coming to Kashmir, the same thing. India played its dramas again at the UNGA in response to all the allegations that Pakistan placed upon India. They were based upon facts, based upon evidence. They're documentaries. There's investigative journalism. There's so much of evidence. There are written reports by Human Rights Watch on how the Indian Army committed atrocities against the Kashmiris in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Yet, no action has been taken by United Nations because India fails to abide, like Israel, by the International Code of Conduct. It has a damn care attitude. It says it will continue to bully Kashmiris against the International Code of Conduct because it knows it can get away with it, because it knows it is backed by the only superpower of the world that wants to use India to contain China, its adversary. This is how dirty international politics is. This is how dirty the whole system has become. If we want to create a better world, a peaceful world for our children, for our generations, we have to bypass these regulatory bodies. We have to bypass these governments that are so corrupt. We have to bypass all this red tape, this bureaucratic red tape. And we have to do what is the right thing. Boycott Israel. Sanction Israel. Put Israel in the court. Petition Israel. Petition India. Boycott India. Sanction India for committing heinous war crimes against Palestinians, against Kashmiris, and then Israel threatening to nuke again Iran, threatening to nuke again Gaza, And this could be happening right now as I say these words. I'm broadcasting this speech at around 2 o'clock in the morning right now because of the urgency of the speech. Netanyahu could be planning a nuke attack on Gaza right now, planning to use the same uranium-enriched neutron bombs against the Gaza civilians in the name of defense against Hamas. And nobody is going to do anything about it, except United Nations will evacuate its own workers in anticipation of this nuke attack. The fact that the United Nations decided to evacuate its workers shows that they know about this anticipated attack. They know about this, and yet they will not talk about it, which means they're technically working for Israel, which means they're technically working for US. That is why every resolution that has been passed in the United Nations against Israel for Palestinians has been vetoed by one country and has not emerged or formed into reality. This has to stop. You have to stop looking up to United Nations. You have to stop looking up to Human Rights Watch. You have to stop looking up to Amnesty International. They're corrupt. They are not doing their job. Stop expecting them to do their job. They are creating a planet for you that is going to be absolutely non-viable. And this is going to be in complete 100% cooperation with the global corrupt governments of a very few wealthy nations. You have to defy this. You have to try to look for the truth yourself. And remember, again, my words, do not rely on social media even to give you the truth. The social media is heavily censored now. I've been trying to boost a lot of videos on Google and on Facebook, and they do not let me boost them anymore. Everything is shocking, everything is derogatory, as if the nuclear attack that happened in Syria and Yemen was not shocking. I mean, that should be shocking enough for the Facebook owners to realize that they have children too, that need a viable earth to be able to survive a future, which Israel does not have any care for, which even the US government, the corrupt US government, does not care about. Might is right. Whoever has more power, more wealth, gets his or her way. That has become the only universal law today, applicable in any regulatory body, in any humanitarian agency, and even in the mainstream journalism. There is no justice in the courts. There is no voice for the oppressed in the humanitarian agencies. It's all about money. It's all about power. It's all about influence. So you have to bypass all these regulatory bodies. You have to bypass all these corrupt governments. You have to bypass all this corrupt red tape. And you have to work together. 8 billion of us, we have to work together, whether we are Muslims, whether we are Christians, whether we are Jews, whether we are atheists, whether we are Hindus. We all have to work together because we are all in this melting pot together. It is our future. It is the future of our generations. It is your kids that are going to suffer. And they're going to look back at you and look at you distracted by some social media celebrity gossip and wonder what kind of parents they had. Where were they when Israel was nuking Syria? Where were they when nuke attacks were done in Yemen by Israel? Where were they when Israel was threatening Gaza and Iran with a nuclear attack? Where were they when India threatened Pakistan with a nuclear attack? Where were they when the Kashmiris were being persecuted by India? Where were they when Palestinians were being persecuted by Israelis? Look at the Rohingyas, what's going on? Nothing is happening. The same attitude of Myanmar. saying it has a damn care attitude, it can do whatever it wants to the Muslim minorities. Nobody cares. They're still displaced, millions of them. This is the world we are living in, that might is right, survival of the fittest. We have to change that. Otherwise, there's no difference between us and animals. We are animals, but we are compassionate animals. Even dogs and cats have now more compassion than us as human beings. We can do better than that, can we? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.